When it comes to delivering flowers for life's special occasions, trust the name that's been setting the standard for nearly 50 years. 1-800-Flowers.com. From breathtaking bouquets to one-of-a-kind arrangements, 1-800-Flowers is your authority on quality blooms. Always fresh, always stunning, always delivered with care. And right now, for a limited time, you can save up to 40% off your bouquet and make someone's day. Save up to 40% off today at 1-800-Flowers.com/WWO. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/WWO.
At Walgreens, we know flu season can feel a little chaotic. So we're going to give you our flu info
in a meditation, keeping you calm, just like a certified Walgreens pharmacist will do if you're a little nervous. So walk in or schedule an appointment, and Walgreens will handle the rest.
That's the human kind of help. Walgreens.
Vaccine subject to availability. State, age, and health-related restrictions may apply.
Welcome to the Covert Narcissism podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson. I am not a therapist, and you are not a victim. I was recently asked, what was the biggest problem in your marriage? And I'll be honest, that question stopped me in my tracks. Because how do you sum up years of confusion, walking on eggshells, trying so hard to fix something you couldn't even name? So I sat with it for a little while. I thought about all the usual answers that people expect to hear. Was it money? No, we didn't really fight about finances. We lived within our means, and we mostly agreed on how to handle that. Was it infidelity? No, we didn't have that issue within our marriage. Was it fighting? Not really. We didn't yell. We didn't call each other names. We weren't the couple that was screaming in the driveway or slamming doors. In fact, from the outside, we probably looked fine. In fact, I know we did. We were polite, functional, civil. If you saw us in public, you might even think that we were the couple who had it all together, the ones who just get along. But what you wouldn't see were the long silences, the tension that lived in the space between our words, the way I could feel myself tightening before I even spoke, afraid that whatever I said would somehow land wrong. There were raised voices sometimes, yes, mostly out of frustration, out of desperation to be heard by either one of us, but even those moments never really went anywhere. Because our biggest problem wasn't in what we argued about. It was that we couldn't even talk to begin with. It was the quiet, invisible breakdown that happened every single day. In the small exchanges, in the everyday moments that should have been easy, in the normal, everyday life conversations. Our biggest problem was the inability to have conversation about anything. Welcome back to the Covert Narcissism podcast, where we shine light on the hidden dynamics that twist love into confusion and connection into control. I'm Renee Swanson, and today I want to talk about what it's like when even the smallest conversations leave you feeling confused, silenced, and utterly alone. It wasn't that we didn't talk. We did, about little things, daily things, but even those moments felt strained, like trying to make small talk through a pane of glass. Here is what a typical evening might have looked like for us. As he got home from work, I would often, greet him at the door. I'd want to say hi to him. I wanted to connect with him, try to, see how he was doing after his long day. He wanted me to, and I wanted to as well. I wanted to be present to him and his life. So I would greet him in the kitchen. Hey, how was your day? And he might respond, stressful. So I would say something like, hey, I'm sorry to hear that. Can I pour you something to drink? But the response here is where this all goes so awkward and so, abrasive. Because the response might be something like, well, that's not going to fix my day. And he would walk off. And I just sit there caught between, wanting to help, wanting to connect, wanting to just have conversation with my husband, and now wanting to disappear. Inside, I'm thinking, I didn't say it would fix your day. I just thought we could sit down and talk over a drink. I just thought that, we could appreciate some time together, but never mind, I guess. Out loud, all I would muster would be, okay. Well, after a few minutes of, awkward silence, my mind now spinning, I would try again. And I would say something like, hey, I'm thinking about cooking some chicken for dinner. His response, okay, not even looking up from his phone. So I would continue. Are you hungry? Does that sound good? And his response might be something like, well, what difference does it make? You said that's what you're doing. No, I said I was thinking about it. And he just would reply with something like, well, you just said that's what you're doing, so whatever. Again, I sit there in disbelief. Inside my head, I'm screaming, no, I wasn't making an announcement. I was trying to just have a conversation with you. Every time I kept coming back to, I was trying to just have a conversation with you. This is supposed to be a time when we can, talk. But by that point, I knew better than to say anything out loud, because if I did, it would just turn into another argument about my tone or how I was always right or never understood. So I'd swallow my words, turn back to the kitchen, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest, where I couldn't even have conversation with him. The quiet ache that comes from realizing that even ordinary moments are not ordinary. They're not safe. Why can't I talk to my own husband? Just normal, everyday conversation. All I had wanted was a simple exchange, a little bit of warmth at the end of a day. But somehow every attempt to connect got tangled up in defensiveness, blame, silence, dismissiveness. It was like trying to have a conversation in a room where all the oxygen keeps getting sucked out. There were so many moments like this. Quiet, ordinary evenings that left me feeling invisible. I remember sitting in the house one night trying again just to have normal human conversation. And I made a comment and said something like, hey, I think I'm going to read this book about life during the Great Depression. He didn't say anything. Total silence. So I waited a few seconds thinking, well, maybe he didn't hear me. So I would continue. I think it would be interesting to learn more about what happened during that time. Still, nothing. So I tried even one more time, reaching for something maybe a little bit more personal. My grandpa used to talk about it. Did your grandparents ever tell you stories about that time period? Well, now he looks up from his phone. What? Did your grandparents ever tell you stories about living during the Great Depression? Why? I told you that I'm interested in reading a book about that period. I heard you. Again, silence. Why is this conversation so hard? I'm sitting there awkwardly waiting for him to say anything like, yeah, my grandparents talked about that. Or, hey, that does sound interesting. But nothing. He turns back to his phone, scrolling, eyes glued to the screen, as if my words didn't exist. Why is it so hard to just have simple conversation? And I sit there staring at the floor, that familiar knot rising in my throat. I didn't want deep conversation or some emotional breakthrough. I just wanted to share something simple. But somehow even that felt impossible. It's like tossing a ball to someone who lets it just roll right past their feet every single time. And, you're tossing them the ball and they just stand there, no attempt at catching it. It drops to the floor and rolls past them. And then they act like you're the one who doesn't want to play catch anymore. Because, that's what happened. A few days later, he would say, well, you never talk to me. You never tell me anything about your life. In those moments, I wanted to scream. Are you kidding me? I have tried over and over. I talk about books and memories and ideas, and you shut it down with silence or sarcasm or one-word answers or dismissiveness. But of course, I don't scream. I stay quiet because if I did try to explain, we all know where that would go. That too would somehow become my fault. He would tell me, you're making a big deal out of nothing, or I didn't do that to you, or you always turn things into drama. So I would swallow it yet again. And that's how it goes. A cycle of silence that you didn't create, but constantly blamed for. You end up being both the talker and the accused, the one reaching out and the one who never says enough. This is insanity. Being blamed for the very distance that you've been begging them to close. That's the part that people don't see. From the outside, everything looks calm. No yelling, no chaos, just two people talking or not talking. But inside, it's suffocating. You start to lose track of what normal even feels like. So, what was the biggest problem in my marriage? It was this, that we couldn't have normal conversation, that so many of our interactions were strained, hard, challenging, difficult, and they certainly didn't need to be. This was things like, what are we having for dinner? Or, maybe we should talk about next year's vacation, or the simple stuff. I would try to show care and make conversation, and somehow it would twist into something heavy, sharp, distant. If I shared something funny that happened at work, he'd say, well, that's not funny, or it was weird that I found it funny. If I mentioned being tired, he took it as an accusation that he wasn't doing enough.
At 1-800-Flowers.com, we know that connections are at the heart of being human. Whether celebrating life's joys or comforting during tough times, 1-800-Flowers helps you express what words can't. For nearly 50 years, millions have trusted 1-800-Flowers to deliver thoughtful gifts that help create lasting bonds. Because it's more than just a gift. It's your way of showing you care. Visit 1-800-Flowers.com/WWO and connect today. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/WWO.
At Walgreens, we know flu season can feel a little chaotic. So we're going to give you our flu info
In a meditation, keeping you calm, just like a certified Walgreens pharmacist will do if you're a little nervous. So walk in or schedule an appointment, and Walgreens will handle the rest.
That's the human kind of help. Walgreens.
Vaccine subject to availability. State, age, and health-related restrictions may apply.
Said I miss spending time together, he'd sigh and say, I can't ever make you happy, can I? Conversations just never went right. I was constantly trying to find the right tone, the right phrasing, the right moment to talk, and somehow it still always went wrong. After years of this, I stopped feeling like my words even belonged to me anymore. No matter what I said, he'd find a way to change the meaning. He'd interpret my words as criticism, guilt, manipulation, things that were never there. I could say it's really hot outside today, and he'd respond, well, it's not my fault that you wore long sleeves. Well, I didn't say it was. I know this sounds ridiculous, but he could turn anything into an attack at him. I say it sounds ridiculous, but you are listening to the Covert Narcissism podcast. I don't think it sounds ridiculous to you. When you live in that kind of energy day after day, you start to lose your sense of normal. It's like walking on invisible glass. You don't even know where the sharp edge is anymore, but you're bleeding anyways. I just learned to keep conversations surface level, to only say what was necessary, and even that didn't work. You already know that. I learned to speak only when it was absolutely necessary, and even then I'd rehearse it in my head 100 times first. Self-expression started to feel dangerous. It was feeling that way long before my mind caught up. It took me a while for my mind to realize what was going on, but my body felt it. I was saying less and less to him. I was thinking things like, what's the point? Every attempt to connect just left me more disconnected. Every effort to explain only made things worse. It's like trying to play catch with someone who keeps throwing the ball into the neighbor's yard and then blaming you for losing it. Looking back now, I do understand what was happening. Covert narcissists don't hear words through curiosity and connection and empathy. They hear them through shame. Everything you say gets filtered through a belief that they are being judged, blamed, or attacked. So when I said we never really talk anymore, what he heard was, I'm failing as a husband. When I said I wish we could spend more time together, what he heard was, you're doing everything wrong. And instead of responding with openness, hey, when I say we never really talk anymore, an open response would be, hey, you're right. We need to spend some time together. What about if we go out on a date night? Or what if we set some time aside tonight? But no, instead he would shut down, deflect, or twist things until somehow I end up apologizing again. Times when I thought we were having conversation, okay, the attempts at conversation at least, it's like I was in a competition, and there's no winning in this game. It's hard to describe the exhaustion that comes from that kind of constant miscommunication. And I guess I used to not think it was a miscommunication. I can't call it a miscommunication. It's a lack of communication. It's not a miscommunication would be a wrong communication. This is a zero communication. And so you start living in your own head. You run imaginary conversations trying to predict how they'll react. You edit your words mid-sentence and you apologize for your tone, your timing, your phrasing before words even come out of your mouth. After a while, you just stop talking. There were nights that we'd sit in the same room, barely speaking. I'd want to share something, a memory, a thought, something about my day. But I could feel the tension rising inside of me before I even opened my mouth, and I'd swallow those words and say, nope, it's just not worth it. That's how the loneliness sets in. The loneliest place I've ever been is sitting beside my own husband. Not because I was physically alone, but because my voice had nowhere safe to land. It took me a long time to realize that I wasn't the problem here on this one. I used to think I just needed to learn how to communicate better. But you cannot communicate with someone who does not want to understand you or hear you. Communication requires sending and receiving. If receiving is blocked and not happening, it doesn't matter how good you get at sending. Communication is not going to happen. You can't find connection with someone who's only listening for threat. Healing for me has been about reclaiming my own meaning, knowing that I was communicating to connect, learning that my words were safe. And if I say something, it doesn't need to be analyzed or justified or decoded. It just means what it means. Now when I talk with friends or my kids or, my family, I practice letting my words breathe. I don't over-explain anymore. I did for a long time. I don't defend. I just speak. And sometimes I say things I could have said better. Yes, I understand that. Podcasting has actually gotten me a whole lot better at this. And when someone listens and they get it, when they truly hear me, that connection, when I send, in a conversation with a friend, and they receive, I can feel my nervous system relax a little bit more each time. That's what safety feels like. When I look back now, I can see that the biggest problem in my marriage wasn't money, it wasn't infidelity, it wasn't lack of effort. It was the slow, quiet suffocation of being unheard. It was having your voice stifled over and over. Every conversation was a maze. Every word was a potential weapon. Every silence was a punishment. That's not communication. That's control. And maybe for you, it looked different. Maybe you were dealing with financial control. Every purchase questioned, every dollar tracked. Maybe you did face betrayal through infidelity or constant flirtation and gaslighting when you tried to bring it up. Maybe it was yelling and cursing and emotional volatility that kept you walking on eggshells. Or maybe it was complete emotional neglect, the silent treatment, stonewalling, the invisible wall between you. Covert narcissism doesn't wear just one face. That's why so many survivors question themselves for so long, because it doesn't always look like abuse, even though it feels like living without oxygen. Whatever your version looked like, it was real, and you deserve to call it what it was. This is abuse, and this is wrong. Healing starts when you stop comparing your pain to someone else's and start honoring your own truth. Your story matters. And I ask you, what is it that was so wrong for you in this relationship? You deserve to be heard without judgment. And if you're ready to take the next step towards healing, please reach out. You can check out my coaching services at covertnarcissism.com. And please hit that subscribe button, that like button, that follow button so that we can continue to expand our community and reach out to the others, those around us who are hurting and need to hear these messages. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. You have been listening to the Covert Narcissism podcast, where we break apart the insidious nature of these incredibly destructive and infinitely frustrating individuals. If you are caught up in this crazy-making relationship and drowning in self-doubt, guilt, or rumination, please reach out to me anytime. I offer individualized live coaching in both group and individual settings. We can find the right program for you. You do not need to go through this alone. You can find all of that information on my website at covertnarcissism.com. You can also reach out to me by email at Renee, RENEE, at covertnarcissism.com. I do look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. Remember, I am not a therapist, and you are not a victim. I am a coach, and you are a survivor. The information provided by Renee Swanson, Covert Narcissism Podcast, and CNG Life Coaching is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. Renee shares stories from her personal experience as well as from those that she has worked with for several years. Her material does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support an allegation or support a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and the information provided. Thank you.